We are live. We are live. We are live. We are live. All right. Are we audible? I think I can hear myself.
We are.
This
Well, this new camera angle.
it's a working shop, everybody. Welcome to the Podshop. We are going to just clear our throats for a little bit here and make sure that everybody's ready to roll.
Give everybody a second to sit in. Kevin Miller, yes. Steve A, yes.
What's up, everybody? I got to get rid of those sound effects. Man, we can do so much with this software. We could just have a DJ show where we play our top 5 favorite songs of all time.
And then get kicked off YouTube promptly. Exciting news from the Podshop today. Based on recommendations from listener Eric, we have a hardwire from my house that's 150 feet long coming into the Podshop. So what that promises, hopefully, is that we won't have any dropouts or fuzziness or anything like that. We got a direct line to the internet now.
That is the promise. So we shall see. It runs 150 foot, or that's 50 meters for those of you in the rest of the world, the whole way around the house. It is sort of ridiculous. Your son immediately saw it as the most interesting toy in the entire property.
It's like, don't pull on that, please.
Please. Daddy and Uncle Dan risked their lives to get that cord. So we hope you guys can hear us loud and clear here from the Podshop. I want to give a shout out to blogger Rye Rob, who maybe tomorrow I'll figure out how to pull it up, but ryerob.com writes a blog where he has this like institutional blog post, which is like, what are the top job boards in the world for hiring for remote workers and stuff. WFH, hashtag WFH. That's what we all are now. We're WFA, work from anywhere. Why don't we just do remote work? I think because work from home is different from remote work.
It's all very confusing. Rye Rob was on the show, though. He was on Tropical MBA show a couple months ago, and he outlined his process for how he writes these beasts of
a post. I mean, it is a really awesome resource. It was so amazing to wake up and see that we are number 3 on that list.
That's podium.
That's number 3. Get it for the thumbnail. That is so cool. But I got to give a shout out to Alexander and Lena, who head up the team at Dynamite Jobs. Our goal there is just placements. We do everything we can to get great workers with great companies. And after I interviewed Ryan about that, or we were interviewing him for different reasons, and then I realized he had this post about job boards, and I said, you got to look at like what Alexander and Lena are doing over here. Like, we are a lot better than a lot of these boards in a lot of ways. You know, no pressure. Take your time to review this. And we wake up this morning, months later, number 3 on the list. Ooh, so exciting. Sick. Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it. Certainly, if the team can help you guys grow your remote teams, or if you're looking to WFH to join the remote revolution, no better way than to get a remote job and to learn while you get paid. No free jobs over there. It's all paid stuff.
All paid. And this stuff is we're still trying to figure out the cycles, you know. It's like, because I feel like we have like a little temperature gauge in the water here, trying to figure out like what's going on. And this week there seems to be more people posting jobs.
Yeah.
For the last couple weeks, it was like everybody was on a freeze, and we obviously understand why, given what's going on right now. But starting to see a little bit of an uptick this week. So it's cool. I'm trying to use it as a barometer to understand what's going on in the real world. I don't know if it's if we have a big enough audience yet, or
nobody knows what's going on in the real world. But it's interesting to see people downshift, freeze, and then say content or whatever. You know, like there are business models that are blowing up right now, and it's cool to see. You know, people in the Dynamite Circle, for example, like, yeah, there's a lot of like, woe is me, like now's a really tough time for sure. But there's also a lot of brap, like just like we're going to turn gears, we're going to go this other way. And it's awesome to see people sort of zig and zag in real time and be resourceful and be excited when it's just so easy to feel down on yourself and feel sorry for yourself. I get inspired by that, and I want to do something positive every day too. So shout out to the entrepreneurial community, and shout out to you guys in the comments. It's so cool to just wake up every morning and say what up and share some ideas, and hopefully these things are going to make their way to the podcast.
Speaking of comments, Jim Roman, wow, Dan convinced the boss man to splurge a little bit. Well done, John. So let me tell you about my splurging here. We actually bought 2 cables. We bought the cable for today.
It's an all-timer, Jim.
This is an all-timer. We bought the cable for today, which is running across the yard, okay? And then I bought the cable to bury, which is like the official permanent solution. So actually, we bought 2 cables.
2 cables, Jim. And I'll tell you what, we are one like stray soccer ball away from being offline. Yeah. Appreciate you guys in the comments. It's cool. You know, we're all locked out here together. And it's just awesome to do this like live stream thing. We don't know what we're doing, but it's fun. Today we're going to do a podcast, a mailbag podcast. We are an enormous fan of long form emails from you guys, the listeners. Our emails are up there on the screen. We love using these emails as a jumping off point, which we're going to do today. Today's emailer's name's Kevin. In fact, today's writing was so good and in depth, we're going to publish it in full at the Tropical MBA blog, which we're putting a fresh coat of paint on right now. We're going to fire up some blog posts in the coming days and weeks. This letter to the editor will be a part of that blog relaunch, so to speak. We're just going to use excerpts today to react to this fundamental tension between saving money and making money and what that means for us as entrepreneurs. And I just want to thank Kevin for putting himself out there, and also give the caveat that when we respond to these emails on the podcast, I can't be thinking about Kevin, you know, because I don't want to give Kevin advice. I don't know his particular situation. So I just want to give big props to Kevin for giving us like fodder to go in whatever direction we want. And I would never, unless I'm sitting down with Kevin for like an hour at a time, I wouldn't want to say, hey man, here's what you should do. I mean, these things are very complex and subtle. And so I don't know what Kevin should do with his life. Sounds like he's got a lot of things figured out, but I do know one thing Kevin should do. Keep writing us emails.
Yeah.
Because this email was amazing. So let's set the tone then in this fundamental situation or tension between saving money and making money. And of course, this is all in the context of our relationship as entrepreneurs to the financial independence, retire early crowd, which we see ourselves as sharing almost everything except that final step of what to do about income generation. So Kevin writes, hey, I'm really enjoying these recent daily YouTube lives. It's one of the few ways to feel connected to a larger community right now as we're locked in. We agree. My thought is this now. When living abroad as digital nomads, we were able to have the best of both. We could live it up in terms of lifestyle, dining out every day, living in beautiful high-end apartments, drinking lattes all day long. Now we're back on the Folgers, all while still saving money and building wealth. However, when we got back to the United States, so the longer context is Kevin moved back to the United States, I believe in order to raise a family, although it could have been any reason, we really didn't change our behavior too much. We found an affordable apartment to live in. We kept dining out. We kept drinking those lattes and those $5 cold brews, which are so delicious.
As you do.
And went on lots of mini vacations across the country. I think that the lifestyle design and business coaching worlds really focus heavily on the making money side of things. So that would be product market fit, marketing, SEO, conversion optimization, etc. But perhaps not enough on the saving money side, personal frugality especially, not just business, which is vital for wealth building. So Kevin finishes by saying, it's the other side of the equation. Perhaps it's not discussed because it's not sexy and or interesting. Thus, I'm guessing that there are lots of folks who are indeed killing it from an income point of view, but my suspicion is that many of them are also blowing a lot of money that they're making, especially if they're living in expensive countries. Now, reading in between the lines here, I think Kevin accused you of being sexy, boss man.
Oh, yeah? In what way?
Only talking about making money. So this idea, thank you, Kevin, for setting us up, this idea, this fundamental tension between making money and saving money. I think his insight that a lot of us are just blowing the money we make with the justification that we're going to make more in the future, that it's good for the business, is absolutely spot the F on.
Yep.
If you don't, it's like making a cake, you know, personal frugality is the flour. It's not necessarily like the sexy ingredient or whatever, but it's got to be there. You know, you're not chomping on the cake thinking, that's some good flour that we put in this thing. You're thinking it needed to be there so that I could have the sugar
Yep.
on the top of it or whatever. But I agree that, we always say we share those first 3 steps with the financial independence crowd, which is, I always felt that the moment I looked at my wallet and I asked myself, how much money am I going to spend on each thing every month? I was treating my wallet like a balance sheet, that I was an entrepreneur. And actually, it was the prospect of making money that inspired me to even have a budget in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you and I went through this phase of life together, actually. I remember it. We both had credit card debt when we were at our first jobs. I borrowed money to buy a car and all this stuff. We're like rocking up to our jobs, and we're both screwed. Like, we didn't have any money. I mean, at that time, I think I was putting like $10 of gas into my account and in my tank. I like couldn't even fill my tank up all the way.
I remember that.
Like, in my 20s.
You're very conscious of when the paycheck's coming in and you roll into the gas station with the Capital One card or whatever.
Yeah, and what happened was essentially we had to get on the straight and narrow because we actually had to figure out how to build a business, and we figured out really quick, like, we can't do this in debt. Like, we can't do this owing other people money. Like, we got to get our own finances in order to be able to try and grow this business. So we were kind of forced into it. I don't know if I would have corrected so much if I didn't have to start a business, for sure. I mean, who doesn't like $5 lattes?
Well, this is what I love about the FIRE community, is that it's such an empowering feeling. I did Dave Ramsey's cash-based wallet budget, where when I would get my paycheck, I would go to the bank and get like a wad of money.
I remember
in
this.
my mind, I would have like 14 days, and I have like little separators in my wallet. You have the wallet with the little, and I would put, like, I would say, okay, I'm going to spend $75 on my hobby, which is golf. I'm going to spend $150 at the grocery store. I'm going to spend this much on gas or whatever. I had 4 different categories, and I could watch my money dwindling over 14 days. But I knew that the money that I had set aside for savings was going to be safe in that bank, because what was in that wallet was all I was going to spend. And that was an enormously empowering feeling. And I was inspired to do it because I learned about entrepreneurship, and I realized that I could easily spend this dream away. And again, it's that fundamental thing. But one of the things I love about Kevin's emails, there's something else fundamental in here, which is drinking cheap wine in Europe. That's pretty cool.
Gosh.
And he's
Missed
right.
that.
Well, you know what's crazy? You look at like the FIRE community, and they're talking about, like, there's this really cool thing called like growing your own vegetables. And I agree. But the moment someone walks by with like a cool little trendy suitcase and a scarf around and says, "We're off to Lisbon, everybody," I'm like, cool. I drop my
your trowel.
Yeah, I drop my trowel. I'm like, I'm that asshole friend. I'm like, peace, guys. I'm out of here. I'm going to Lisbon.
Well, let's break that down, because although it's a joke, there's some truth to it, which is basically what Kevin is explaining is basically baselining in Europe, which is just unbelievable. If baselining, meaning having a very low expense threshold. So basically your expenses are set very low. And the idea here is basically you go to somewhere like Lisbon that costs a lot less than the United States to live, and you can buy these lattes and you can do all these wonderful things that you still want to do for a low price, cheaper than you could do it in the United States. So while you have to farm your own potatoes in the United States, you could also be in Lisbon. And although that option isn't available to everybody, right? I mean,
Sure.
Kevin has a family. He made it work. But for some people, it's not available to just get on a flight and go to Lisbon. It is an option.
Right.
And it is a pretty cool option to be able to save money while you're drinking wine in Lisbon.
Pretty cool, Kevin. He's a smart guy. One more quote from Kevin to get to our second point. So we're talking about the tension between saving and making, and we'll loop back to sort of a bow tie on that. But I want to talk about the second issue, which is sexifying saving, which he points out. One area where the FIRE, again, financial independence, retire early gurus, are filling the gap that us entrepreneurs are leaving on the table, is that they've figured out how to make the concept of saving sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important.
Agree.
I totally agree with this.
And this is, Portugal is sexy as well. So here's part of the argument, I think, for baselining in a place like Europe or Asia.
Baselining. So why do we say baselining instead of just, I don't know, be frugal? What's the difference?
It's a good question. I think it's the same thing.
We're sexifying it.
We're sexifying it. Marketing.
It's not saving money. It's baselining. Baselining, I think, is something that you like go to do, and like being frugal is just something that you're like, I'm frugal. I'm not gonna go to the movie theater. I'm gonna rent. I'm gonna rent a movie, watch it at home. Popcorn's cheaper at home. I love this idea of sexifying saving money, but one of the things we've always emphasized here at the TMBA is like, I don't like saving on consumables that take you a lot of time to make said savings. So it's like a lot of stuff in like the frugality movement is like, hey, you don't have to like buy iced tea. You can make it. It only takes 3 hours in your backyard. It's like, really? Like that's not sexy. Like spending all Sunday afternoon making. I remember the breakthrough when I was like, you know what? I'm going to pay somebody to do my laundry. Why? Well, because Sunday afternoon is a great time to build a business.
Bingo. So here's one of the big differences between the two communities is you need time, and you need a lot of time to build your business. And if you're always trading your time to make iced tea, then you know what you're going to end up with the end of it, this whole process is like pitchers of iced tea and no business. So there's trade-offs to be made, right? And I don't think Kevin is in the wrong for wanting to drink lattes. Everybody loves a latte. So if you can do it in a way where you can move to Lisbon, you can get your latte, and you can still have your time, that's a pretty appealing approach to me.
Boss man, can I interrupt this stream? Because I got a little stream anxiety.
Okay.
Are we still online? Can people still hear us? Are we still audible? People...
Looks like it.
All right, fantastic. I just want to check. Okay.
Yeah, we're good. Oh, woo. You got so nervous,
man. I got stream
man.
anxiety. Somewhere just came out of nowhere.
You guys can't see his pupils, but they got huge.
My friends now make fun of me. They always say I have content anxiety, which is sort of like this character I started to put on, and now it's following me around like the plague. So I'm just really leaning into it. We talked about sexifying, freeing up your time, and in those early days of a business, or right now when it's like all hands on deck. This is an exciting time if you run a business. The gearing, you can see it. So I remember me and you, like the laundry thing was a big deal because that's 1/7 of our week freed up.
Yep.
And we would see like a product iteration, or we would actually do something that would make a difference, in other words, that day. And that was enormous. And by the way, speaking of sexifying saving money, I think doing that in a context of a business is the ultimate sex appeal. Some things that jump out to me: one-way ticket to paradise. That's a baseline. That's sexy. That's frugality in a plane ticket. That can exist. How about hiring remote or building teams in other countries? How about designing a business model specifically that allows you to leverage all of this to avoid certain kinds of taxation, to avoid certain types of payroll taxes, certain types of employees that are pains in the butt or whatever? There are ways to sexify your margin, saving money. And if that at the end of the day is the iced tea plan, that's cool too. But I'm all about like up leveling that. Let's get past the iced tea stuff and start thinking about how we can get maximum time input into an asset value that will one day return over the long term.
Yep.
There's also some unsexy ways to save money. And one of the ones that you wrote in here, brutal, losing friends, certainly would be considered an unsexy way to save money. How's that work?
You might lose friends when you go to Portugal. That's for sure. I mean, unless you invite them.
Certainly if you post about it on Instagram incessantly, you might lose some friends.
That's right. How smart you are for baselining in Portugal. I think both of these approaches, it doesn't matter. If you're a fire person or you're a get on a plane to Portugal person, you're going to lose friends because if you're like us, you get really annoying about this idea. Like it flows through every vein in your body. Like it becomes who you are. Like I am this persona. Like I am the person that's baselining in Portugal. And if like you're not on my team, then you're not part of this, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that it becomes like your identity, you know, in a lot of ways. Like
that's part of what sexifying is all about. It's like it's bigger than the iced tea, man. It's fire. Right?
Yep.
Or it's bigger than Portugal, man. It's lifestyle design. It's life location independence.
Yep.
And yeah, that can be super intolerable.
It really can. And that's why you have these communities of people that are super intolerable together.
Yeah, they all go around together like a bunch of jerks.
Exactly. So you'll find new friends, but you might lose some of your friends on the way. I mean, we lost friends along the way. You know, when you're baselining, when you're starting a business, you stop going to people's weddings. You know, you stop going out on Friday night. You stop doing a lot of the things that you would have done before. And like any tribe, you ever notice this in these tribes? Like people try and they don't let you get too far away,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, oh, Dan, like you're not watching football this Sunday? Like, pretty weird, dude. Pretty weird.
I did have a watch football on Sunday tribe, and look, it's hard to explain to them. It's easy to say I'm going to go make some iced tea or whatever. It's harder to say I'm in Adobe Illustrator, like I'm working with this guy named Ian that's not friends with you guys, like we're doing this thing. Sometimes you're going to lose some friends over these, and you look kind of pathetic, and in some ways, from one perspective, you absolutely are, because hey, we're friends, this is what we do together, and now you're in Adobe Illustrator, that's your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, how about just not show up? That's better, and not explain it. It's tough. All right, so our number 2 point, we are talking about making money, or saving money rather, in sexy and unsexy ways. Of course, boss man, an expert in the sexy ways.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Number 3 point, leveraging Kevin's amazing email. We're going to talk about making money. Kevin writes, we've done well for ourselves, and our 2 businesses have consistently brought in a combined revenue of over 6 figures. Now, Kevin points out that he's been at this for 6 years. But the cash store that we expected to have by now simply isn't there. Last year, as I looked back, I realized there were probably a few reasons for this. While we've had a solid source of revenue, growth sort of stopped there, especially for our primary business, due to it being in such a small niche, and that efforts to grow that revenue have not made much of a dent. Now I'm going to pull out my
Your
Folgers.
coffee?
I'm going to pull out my Folgers and pour one out for my guy Kevin.
Well, Doug is in the comments here saying, how much iced tea are these dudes drinking? Coffee in the morning,
See,
iced tea at lunch.
Doug, I appreciate the shout out, man. I talked to Doug the other day for an hour on the phone, and it was a lovely conversation. I'm assuming we're talking about the same Doug here. And what I did was a classic TMBA move. Doug gave me some good ideas. I thanked him for the good ideas. I regurgitated them to 2 or 3 people who gave me positive feedback on said ideas. And then I completely forgot about Doug. And, and now they're my ideas.
This is a very you thing.
And I appreciate it, Doug. You're the salt of the earth. But it's awesome. Like, it's kind of one of the bright sides of this lockdown is just talking to cool people. I've been listening to Doug's podcast, The Doug Show, like I'm a secret listener. I walk around, I listen to it. I'm like, oh, Doug doing this, Doug doing that. It's interesting, smart guy. And then I write down notes, and it inspires me. I'm in the game, man. I love this whole swapping ideas stuff. The point that we were talking about here is making money, and that I was going to pour out some Folgers for my guy Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is this. Kevin been in the game for 6 years.
Yeah.
Kevin is an entrepreneur facing a lot of stress. Kevin has 2 kids, got to pay for the kids. Kevin's probably got friends down the street that make more money than him.
Yeah.
And think that he's kind of a bit of a nutbag for being an entrepreneur.
And they actually are probably the same friends that were...
the football friends.
Yeah. They were curious why he was going off to do Illustrator. Kevin went off to do Adobe Illustrator or whatever he did. Comes back. Again, Kevin's a fictional character.
This is Kevron.
Yeah. Kevron comes back, looks down the street. He's like, man, my life is so stressful. I'm making the same amount of money as my friend was. He's continued to get to watch football and do all this fun stuff.
Well, and
Here I
Kevin's
am.
right. There's different kinds of stress that you're taking on. If you're the football guy who has the solid job at the good company, who thinks he's going to stick around for the next 6 months, that is a different kind of stress. You're not in control, but that alleviates a lot of things too. Sometimes you can come home at 6 p.m. depending on the job, and you can bank that money and you can focus on the 2 kids. And that's a real thing. So I'm not going to deny that. I will say this on the other side of the aisle. 6 to 7 years is about the time things start to pop.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a pattern that we're seeing. We always talk about the 3-year pattern, the 1,000-day thing, where you start to see people replace that income. So you get to 6 figures in the bank every year, but of course you got to spend a lot of it to live or whatever. Ideally you wouldn't, but sometimes you got it. So ideally you'd be in Portugal.
Yep.
You know, drinking the wine, dropping to the bottom line, hiring a bunch of people instead of paying yourself a salary.
Right.
But you got to be back home. You got to be spending money. You got to up the revenues a little bit.
Right.
Things start to pop around. So you're 6, 7, 8. The reality is a lot of times it just won't pop. And a lot of times your business model isn't the right thing. And a lot of times you got to re-engage and launch some new things, do some things that are tangential, business models that are smarter. Sometimes you're barking up the same tree for too long, but you can use those resources to have a better business model on the side. Now, the hedge is this. What kind of stress do you want? Do you want to be direct? What's the better tenure? Long ball, a lovely little game we like to call long ball. The entrepreneurship hedge does require a lot of personal stress and luck, but you have unlimited upside in terms of wealth and time input to generate that wealth, potentially.
Yep.
A lot of us will fail, but that's the potential. And in the short term, I think the hedge is this, is that you're free. You're free in terms of what it takes to make $1. That's a kind of a freedom that most people never have. You also, something I very proudly tried to express to my philosophical mentor, was how proud I was of, you're free to be the kind of person that says what he does and does what he says. And most people don't have that luxury in life. They play politics for a living. And so respect, that's why I'm pulling out some Folgers to my guy Kevron, because I think it's kind of a badass challenge to take on in life. And of course you don't have to, but it's a cool one to do. And finally, you can still go back to Portugal for 2 months, even if you make $100,000 a year. And so you have that hedge of the freedom to explore your curiosities, to spend time with your kids, to maybe say, I'm just going to be frugal for the next 4 or 5 years because the priority for me is to play soccer and to screw up Dan and Ian's internet cable instead of working 12 hours a day and the kid thinking, where's daddy? Where's mommy? So that's a cool thing that entrepreneurs can do as well. So
let me just tell you what it's like.
Actually, I'm only going to pour that Folgers down my throat because I need it.
Let me just tell you what it's like hanging out with the kid all day. Where's daddy? Where's mommy? There's a reason children go to school. And you've been around this property long enough to see what that reason is.
It ain't to learn, man. It's to get the hell out of here, man.
All right. We've got a couple comments in here. Thanks for sticking around. Jim says, Kevin, Dan, Ian, Lisbon is attainable. What do you think about Southeast Asia with young kids? The wife is looking to have kids, but I'm pushing for more time in Southeast Asia first. She says we can do both. Need those SEA vibes. Okay. Lots of thoughts on this, obviously. We have several friends that have kids in Southeast Asia. There's plenty of schooling options for children in Southeast Asia. Yes. I think it's very possible to have kids there. And also, childcare is a lot less expensive in Southeast Asia. So, actually, we were talking about this last night. And at
length.
The details and the nuances of this conversation could go for a long time. I want to just say this, so clearing my throat. Sorry. Imagine what your community might look like in Southeast Asia. I think that's the most important thing. Yes, you can live in Southeast Asia. Yes, you can have childcare and all this stuff. Will you find yourself in a community with like-minded individuals that share your values? And I think as time is going on, the answer is yes. Like you can find your people there. When we first started doing this 10 years ago, not so much. It would be like a very weird thing to see a family over there unless they were like part of the consulate or something like that. Now people are moving there as travelers, as digital nomads, and I think they're starting to form communities. Bali's a decent place for that. Chiang Mai is a decent place for that.
Yeah. And certainly a lot of the metro areas have, I think you could argue, like better education. It just depends like what you value for your children. I think we could make a general statement, a couple. I agree with you. The infrastructure is there. The social network is there in a lot of these places. People are doing it for sure. I think we can also say on the other side of the token, it's going to be a lot more transient. I think almost anywhere you can count on that. Like the people that are in your lives are probably not going to be in your lives 3 years from now. Now I can think, having spent half a decade going to Chiang Mai every year, now I can see the people that are there for the longer term and a lot of young couples raising kids there and stuff. And so that's starting to get more consistent. Again, these things are new trends. So I think it's a safe bet that, hey, maybe those new couples who did plan on being there for 5 years, now they're not, and I think that's the sort of thing you open yourself up to. Of course, I don't know, Jim, where you're from, but in America, that is also the reality in our cities as well.
They're becoming even more transient.
And Americans are these, it's something that as like this digital nomad, you sort of take for granted or whatever, but Americans move around more than almost anybody because we've got like 20 cities that are essentially all the same, and you go where the jobs are. And so all of our friends live, 3-hour plane flights away from their families and stuff. And so we're quite a transient culture as well. So I don't know, Jim, if that addresses what you're on about, but I think it's totally feasible. It's a cool adventure. You know, I wouldn't go into it with the expectations or the rose-colored glasses, so to speak, that this is going to be like a 10-year or a 5-year thing, because I think the reality of that kind of plan is that things change a lot. That's the value in them. That's the excitement in them. I've heard from a lot of parents that it's those changes specifically that they value for their children, and it just depends on what you want to do.
Mike Stankovich comes in and says, "Can it be done?" Yes, he has done it, but it can be extremely expensive depending on the kind of education quality you're expecting. Moved back when his kids were 7 and 10.
Yeah, because you're in this like rich crowd automatically if you don't want to go local,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're in Spain and you're like, oh, I don't want my kid to learn Catalan, then it's like international school or bust,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, but you are saving money other places, what we talked about here. So yeah, your school expense might go up, and it's pretty high here. I can't imagine it's much higher there, but yeah, it might go up, but you are saving money in other ways.
We talked about last night how cool it would be to do a comparison. Like, it depends on your business model. There's so many sophisticated things, but like certain businesses, if you just like up and move that family and that business to another country, you could make like $100,000 extra a
Mhm.
year, like overnight. How hard, and think about back to the beginning of this episode. One of the things I failed to mention is, here's the badass thing about saving money. It's easy. It's easy.
Yep. You just got to subscribe.
You just got to not spend that money. Making money is hard. We just talked about, obviously, Kevron is super smart. It's taken him a decade to figure out this puzzle of how to generate sustainable income and stuff at a high scale. It's really, really complicated stuff, and it's worth doing. It's a wonderful pursuit, but it's really hard, and saving money is really easy. So if something pops up where you can say, oh man, for 5 years I could educate my kids in this way, I could save on these taxes, I could save on these staff members, childcare taken care of. Cool plan. Like, that's a cool plan. And there might be your time equation there too, where, man, there's a business model. I'm into affiliate marketing. So I am going to go to Chiang Mai, and my whole affiliate marketing content team is going to be in Manila. There's an international school that I got a quote on. I talked to a bunch of parents. That's kind of a cool project that I could get behind, you know? Like, I love that kind of, hey, here's a 3-year plan, how I can get the most of our energy as a couple, say, into this business, even though we have kids. I think that's a cool idea. Well, I'm out of juice. Big shout to Kevron, all our fans out there in the live stream, all our fellow entrepreneurs doing their thing. Hope we can give you a little bit of energy today to go out and do the difficult thing.
Cool, man. Well, this has been episode 16.
16, I can't
believe it or not.
it. That's it. Shout out. We'll be back tomorrow. Same bat time. Same bat live stream. See you guys.